Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to round number 5 of the Dark Sphere PPTQ. I am Shay Holland, I'm joined by Tom Law, and we are just going to send you down to our backup feature match, who is Mikolai versus Carlos. Oh, I've just been told that we are being put back to our main camera, and it is Pip Griffiths versus Alasdair Glen. We have Pip Griffiths on Bant ramp, and Alasdair. We're just getting to find
we're just getting
the
his
deck
deck
list.
list right now. So if we go to them. So Pip is actually, some of you might know him as the perennial Welsh national team captain. He's on a bit of a spicy brew today. He's playing Bant ramp, as I understand it. It's not your traditional ramp deck. It's not trying to get to Ulamog or anything like that. It's still trying to get to Ugin, but the card that he's trying to get to is actually Dragon Lord Dramoka. So, no, don't have to do the deck lists. What Pip's deck does is trying to get to Dragon Lord Dramoka, probably because that card is really, really good against Jeskai Black. So it gets around Uchitai's command.
Yep.
And it doesn't die to your burn spells. It is a bit weak to Crackling Doom, but he is playing the blue because he gets to play things like Dispels and Negates. So he can protect all these big threats that he's landing.
Sure. Is he running any Uchitai?
As far as I'm aware, he's not, but he is running Haven, so he can return Ugin and Dragon Lords. So he's playing the ramp deck a bit like the Eldrazi ramp deck, but rather than abusing Sanctum to get Ulamog, he's abusing Haven to return Ugins and Dragon Lord Dramokas.
Okay, cool.
So in terms of the ramp suite, it's very typical of what you get in the Eldrazi ramp deck. So it's still playing Explosive Vegetation. It's still it plays Hedron Archive rather than Nissa's Pilgrimage. Because it's a 3-color deck, you can't just search for forests. You have to be able to search for other colors. I think it also runs Nissa's. Sure. It also plays Nissa as a 4-off, because obviously it's meant to be a control-y type of ramp deck as opposed to just a ramp to big threats and just hope that you can't deal with it.
Right.
So it's in addition to all of these, it's running Dig Through Times and Planar Outburst.
Okay, sounds interesting. So we'll send it down to the table and we'll see. So we've got Alasdair on your typical sort of Abzan decks. So Hangerback Walkers, he's running Knight of the White Orchid. So that's not something we normally see in this list, actually.
So he's it looks like he's running the
more green-white
Autumn Burchett type of Abzan aggro. So Autumn, I don't know whether you know, she played really well at the last Pro Tour. Was the top constructed
9-1, I believe.
Yeah,
9-1 finish.
Yeah, X1 record, and she ran the 4/4 Knight of the White Orchids in the main deck to basically get herself ahead on the draw.
I've been doing some testing with Knight, and the decks that I'm running 4 Knight of, I really like playing actually on the draw in that matchup. Well, being able to go make something on turn 2, and then your turn 3 is Knight plus kill your guy, or like plus Silk Wrap or something like that, really gets you ahead.
Yeah. So apart from the Knights, it's a fairly standard Abzan list. It's got your Anafenses, but only 2 of. Obviously the 4 Siege Rhinos and some number of Gideons and Windmate Rocks. It also runs 2 Secure the Wastes, which I can't remember. I think it was also in Autumn's list.
Sure. Interestingly, it's not running any Warden of the First Tree.
Well, I think the reason for that is because you run in the Knights. You can't really afford to make the turn one green mana and also fit in the Knights.
Yeah.
So that's just a concession to that point. Other than that, it's a fairly standard build, and as we see our players shuffling up still, I think the records might be slightly incorrect. I think Pip is actually on 3-0-1, so he's got 3 wins in the draw.
I think they're both 3-0-1.
Okay, sure.
I think it's just the way the record at the top sometimes shows when it's got 3 numbers, the middle one is a draw for some.
Okay, so they're both on 3 and a draw, which is not that surprising when you consider that both these decks are
a bit slow. bit slower than
yeah,
normal.
especially on Pip's side, he's basically playing in control deck. His win conditions, although they're heavy hitting, they take a little while to get onto the table. And we see Alasdair begin with a Sandstep Citadel, and this is going to be a long game, I think. It will be a lot of trading resources, and I imagine that Pip's probably going to eventually draw ahead with his dig through times, which he's running a full 4 of, and also 3 Hedron Archives.
Wow.
Interestingly, he's also playing 2 main deck Surge of Righteousness, which is very... he's going very deep on that one.
Yeah, that's interesting. I guess he realizes that Mono Red is a terrible matchup.
Yep, and it's got good splash damage against this matchup, and also against Jeskai, because it kills Mantis Riders, it kills Rhinos, it kills Anafenza. So it's not a terrible draw, unless it's playing against another green-white deck.
Yep. So Alasdair unfortunately missing his 3rd land drop on the play.
Yeah, I think that's a very typical problem with the Abzan deck, which is probably why it plays the Knight. I wouldn't be surprised if he's actually got the Knight in hand, and he's just waiting for his opponent to play the 3rd land so he can get value out of it.
Potentially, yeah. I think he's probably doing that. And he's probably happy with that as well.
I think in general he would be happy, except in this particular matchup, because he's playing against a ramp deck, being behind. There we go. We see the Knight of the White Orchid that he was potentially sandbagging, but like against a ramp deck, letting them get ahead of you on land when they're already trying to get ahead of you on land, it's quite rough.
Yeah. So, fetching up the planes.
Yep.
Interestingly, you can fetch
the Canopy Vista.
The Canopy Vista.
Yeah. Does he play any other planes? Does he play the Prairie Stream?
No, I think just
the Canopy Vista,
yeah.
which is still quite good. I mean, being able to fetch dual lands in standard is obviously a powerful thing. And there we go. He does have the 4th land as well. So next turn he can stop playing his big spells, so Gideons and Siege Rhinos. But Pip is
Pip is making his Dromoka next turn, so
yeah, he's got the Archive or Explosive Vegetation here, and then next turn he's going to have the Dromoka. So maybe the Alasdair's big drops aren't quite as big as he probably wants them to be.
No, most likely not.
So we see here this is why people are looking towards the ramp deck.
Yep.
So the advantage of the ramp deck is that it goes bigger than you, and it goes there at a reasonable time. And for a fair deck like an Abzan deck, it's quite difficult to stay in touch with that. As Alasdair going to crack his fetch here to probably go for a Forest, yep, which enables his other battle lands to come into play on tap.
Yep.
Does he play Sunken Hollow as his black source? Okay, so he's probably playing Flooded Strands as well then.
Yeah, he's got the full four Flooded Strands.
Okay. So we see a Siege Rhino in his hand, Wingmate Rock, Gideon. Decision point here, whether he plays the Gideon first or the Siege Rhino first. I'm going to guess Gideon, probably the Gideon, but he's going to go lead as a Rhino. Not too surprised by this play, because the Siege Rhino is probably slightly better pressure at this point, and he's probably put Pip on green-white Megamorphs, so he's probably not expecting the Dragon Lord Dromoka to come down next turn, because the way that the
I think he's
although there is a Haven on the table, so perhaps if he's diligent, then he would have spotted that. Oh, and we missed it. Then this is also flipped, so this is getting more and more difficult here for Alasdair.
Yeah, and interestingly, I think here you just
you can play a Dromoka with a Dispel backup.
I know, and this seems really powerful. Next turn he can Ugin. So
a Ugin here isn't as good as he could be, because you have a Nissa that you'd probably rather just keep on the table, and we see Nissa plussing rather than making the table.
Make Ugin this turn.
Yeah, well, does he?
I mean, he's got quite a bit of value out of the Nissa already, right?
He's got options here.
Yeah.
I think I'd still go with the Dromoka.
Almost certainly, yeah. I think Dromoka is probably better at this point than the...
It also gives us, by playing the Dromoka, he kind of says to Alasdair, well, you're not getting through this Dromoka unless you kill her. But you can try and get around it. If you try to get around it, you have to play more to the board. And then my Ugin suddenly looks a little bit better, because I don't mind minusing 4 to kill my Nissa and 4 of your guys. So.
Yeah, exactly. So...
And he just drew a secure the waste.
I think he's got second Rhino in hand as well.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see if he decides to just try and make as many rhinos as he can. And
well, Rhino here is still kind of quite bad. Like Jamoka's a 5/7, so she will eat those rhinos for days. It's fine. The drain life, because Pip is still on quite a healthy 15, isn't doing much for him either. Alasdair's reduced to very limited options here because
unfortunately, yeah,
Gideon is also kind of poor in the situation because he comes into play, he'll make a token, then it'll just die to the Dromoka on a swing back, which is not ideal, and that's just assuming that Pip doesn't play any more spells. So he passes the turn because he sees that basically none of his plays are profitable. I'm assuming he's probably got an Abzan. No,
he can't cast Abzan Charm anyway.
No, but it's interesting because he's passed now, which means he's not going to be able to cast any spells on Pip's turn because of Jamoka. So he's not even holding up a removal spell of some description. He is just deciding to sandbag his additional Rhino and probably wary of the fact that Pip might have Ugin.
I think if you're Pip here, you just don't cast anything. Just play a land.
You could play a land,
attack for 5 and
yeah,
start. You know, you're winning a race right now. You're winning this race, so you're more than happy to just. I mean, he's got 9 mana, and he's got a Hangerback Walker. He can easily make a 4/4 Hangerback Walker that's just going to block for days.
Sure.
You know, and Alasdair can't attack into that 4/4 Hangerback Walker because you really don't want to give your opponent 4/1/1 flyers when your deck is this weak to flyers.
Yes. So Pip elects to make the line of play you said, except it's not going to be quite a 4/4. He's going to go for just a 3.
Just a 3.
I think that's because he wants to keep the Haven mana open in case anything happens to his Jamoka. He can return at the end of turn. Doesn't waste a turn in doing so next turn. He also leaves up enough mana to dispel whatever removal it might be, if it's unless it's a sorcery, which could be a Ruinous Path. But that would be quite different from what you would expect from an Abzan deck.
Yeah,
I don't think many Abzan decks run Ruinous Path.
I don't think he actually is running any Ruinous Path.
No.
So.
But I think he's just covering his bases because he's in the commanding position. He doesn't need to make anything make any plays which is outrageous. He also did just forget his Nissa. She's still on 4, so he didn't plus, he didn't minus, he just left it there.
Interesting that he decided that that he didn't do anything with Nissa.
I think he may have just forgotten, to be fair.
Yeah.
I mean, he's got quite a lot of options in his hand. His opponent's against the ropes. He's probably just neglected the fact because he's got other lines he's thinking of. He's probably thinking whether he wants to play Ugin or not, or whether he wants to play the Explosive Vegetation, or whether he wants to play Hangerback for 2, 3, or 4.
Yeah, I think.
I think Alasdair there forgot that he can't cast Secure the Waste at the end of his opponent's turn.
Yeah.
And then has been, as a result, kind of been time walked by himself.
Yeah. See, with Gideon, I quite like just
picking the emblem
immediately.
Well, he's going to die otherwise.
You're not winning a race otherwise, and I think you just need to, just get to this point where you can just start attacking with your Rhino aggressively.
It's
the
not
problem
so
is
aggressive. There are some Hangerback Walkers sitting there going, kill me, please.
Yeah, unfortunately, if he does that, he does get 5
No, he'll get 3 Thopters because it's
if
damage.
one blocks, if both of them block, he'll probably get at least 6.
No, the Rhino can't kill both of them.
No. If it can actually, because they're 5 power and 5 toughness, and he's got 5 damage. But as in if he attacked with the Knight as well.
Sure, but I don't think Pip would be trading like that unless he's going to go for lethal next turn.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. He might be able to, but
sure. So he's remembered his Nissa this turn, so that's good.
More Havens.
But he's also got Dig Through Time, which is gonna find him more action. And I'm not really sure. This game has been kind of unfortunate for Alasdair. He stumbled on his mana, and I don't know whether he did play for the Knight to be later than it should have been. But if he did play like that, he kind of shot himself in the foot a little bit because, as I said, the ramp deck's trying to get ahead of you in mana, and you're giving them an additional land drop.
Yeah, that seemed quite unfortunate for him that he was unable to. So
Pip does make the Ugin and chooses to -4 it, clearing the way for his Hangerbacks to come in, putting Alasdair to 6.
Pip up to 24.
Yep, and he's still got the Dispel in hand. So Interesting. He's left the Haven mana open rather than another carded source. Not sure whether that's correct, but we'll give him a benefit of that when he's on 24 and his opponent's on 6, with 4 lands on the table facing Ugin, Dromoka, and double Hangerback Walker. He's probably safe.
Doesn't seem the best for Alasdair here.
No. And he's going to make a Desperation Rhino. I mean, Rhino's good, but he's not that good. Especially in the face of Dromoka plus Ugin, that will be 8. It's got can't block both Hangerback, so I think this is lethal on board.
Yeah.
I really like Pip's deck. It's very interesting.
It is very interesting deck.
Like he's playing a lot of the powerful cards in the format. Some sort of forgotten ones. Like Dromoka is definitely. So a lot of the Dragon Lords aren't being played right now because of Crackling Doom.
Yeah.
As we see like Jeskai Black being pushed out of the meta, you can see the resurgence of dragons being more prevalent. And Dromoka's certainly one of those Dragon Lords which can take over a game by itself.
Yeah, I also really like the fact that Ugin is so powerful against these Jeskai decks.
Yeah.
You know, I think that he's best off actually just using against that deck. He just uses the Ugin anyway. So I think the match that even though the Dromokas are bad, the Ugins aren't, and that's really how he wins that game.
Yeah. Well, even the Dromoka's not bad against Jeskai even because
not bad, but as in it's not as good as against, for instance, an Abzan or something like that, where they don't really have the Crackling Dooms and stuff.
Well, Abzan still has Abzan Shamans.
Sure.
But the thing about Dromoka is that even if they do have Crackling Doom, they have to do it in their own turn, which gives you free reign to then resolve your Ugin through negates and disdainful strokes. So it's actually a good, nice 1-2 punch. So we're looking at the sideboards here from Pip and Alasdair. Do you want to run through what Alasdair's got in his sideboard?
So he's got 1 Omnixilus Reignited, 1 Tasiga, 2 Painful Truth, 1 Surge of Righteousness, 2 Ultimate Price, 3 Duress, 1 Transgress the Mind, 3 Dromoka's Command, and 1 Utter End. So I can see the Transgress the Mind, potentially the Duress, and something like maybe the Utter End?
I think in the sideboard, like the first card that pops out at you is obviously Transgress the Mind when your opponent's playing big threats like Dromoka and Ugin. Utter End is not so bad. It does deal with Dromoka quite cleanly. It can also get rid of an Ugin.
Yeah, obviously Alasdair hasn't seen the dispels, so he won't know about those.
Exactly. But he could probably have some sort of inkling that there's a reason for the blue. It's probably counter magic. If it's not dispel, it's probably the negate or disdainful stroke. Which all answer the Utter End. The other option in the sideboard is Obnixilis. I quite like as well. It's another clean way of getting rid of Dromoka. It's also a fairly decent way of kind of maintaining card parity against the blue deck when, again, Alasdair hasn't seen that Pip is running Dig Through Times, but it's like you gotta try and guess at what Pip is going to have in terms of the blue cards. Dig Through Times is probably quite high on that list.
Yeah.
So if we look over to Pip's sideboard, we have 2 Dispels, 4 Disdainful Strokes, 1 Negate, 2 Surge of Righteousness, 4 Jar the Offshoot, and 2 Hallowed Moonlights. I think he's very unlikely to need that much of a sideboard plan. I think the matchup is already quite well favoured towards Pip's side of the matchup. But he probably wants a couple of strokes to deal with the Rhinos and Gideons, potentially some negates. I don't think he necessarily needs a Search of Righteousnesses, especially as he hasn't seen any Anafenzers, and he did see the Knight, so potentially seeing it that as a hint that he's not playing the traditional Abzan aggro list.
Yeah, I think the quite like the Disdainful Strokes.
The strokes answer a lot of the top end threats that he's worried about. Like he's not worried about the Knights. He's not particularly worried about the Hangerback Walkers. Although, if the Hangerback Walkers get to a size which becomes unmanageable, there is very little way that Pip can interact with that. Ugin doesn't get rid of it. Planar Outburst doesn't really get rid of it. So he will be left with facing some rather big Hangerback Walkers, which is potentially why he might board in Hallowed Moonlight as a foil to that, so it stops the tokens coming in.
So, interesting game 2 and 3, hopefully. Hopefully Alasdair won't stumble on mana.
Yeah, I think in the first game, I'm fairly sure he did leave a land back so that he can get some value out of the knights.
Right.
Uh, and I'm not really sure that is correct with the way you play the knights. Like, trying to force value out of that card is probably the wrong way of going about it. Like, the card is fantastic when it works. It's still fine as a 2-drop. It's still a 2/2 with first strike. And his opponent was obviously not interested in playing an early game with you. He just wants to get to late game. So you want to put pressure down on the table and potentially just curve out. Maybe he wanted it because he needed the 4th land drop, but so as we saw, he didn't actually get another land. So maybe that is why he did it.
Yeah, I think he wanted to make sure that he had
the 4th
Sandstep outcast on turn 2 instead of having to crack his fetch and not have the double white for turn 3.
You mean the knights on turn 2?
Sorry, he played Sandstep outcast. Sandstep Citadel, Sandstep Citadel.
Yeah.
So I think he wanted to make sure that he had both Citadels out before going for any more mana.
But he had 2 Sandstep Citadels untapped, and then he passed the turn. And then played the 3rd land, because I think he was trying to get the knight to search for another land, because he wanted to ensure he had four lands, because he didn't have another. He had the 3rd land in hand, but not the 4th.
Right.
So we'll see another quite lethargic start here from Alasdair. 2 tap lands to start things off with, very reminiscent of the old style of Abzan aggro, where you start the first couple of turns with tap lands and you start hitting your creatures, which is interesting because I thought that the new mana bases made Abzan aggro a bit better because it allows you to play your 1-drops into your 2-drops into your 3-drops. But with the knight, I guess the ethos is that you want to just kind of get ahead of mana with the knight and then start playing big spells. So we're going to see a turn 3 Anafenza here, which is the ideal 3-drop here because
it's very hard
for Pip to keep up with that, and you can't disdainful stroke it. So
yeah,
as we see, a disdainful stroke
sneaks under that disdainful stroke there.
Yeah, and 4 power is not something
pretty hard to deal with.
Yeah, pretty much from the sideboard, I think. From the sideboard, he's got 2 surges, and he's got 2 surges main deck that can deal with it, and also playing our outburst, but that's quite slow. Let's go play a Nissa here, I think, and then potentially using it as just a roadblock. So this matchup, this match has so far been kind of illustrative of how the ramp deck kind of functions. So the ramp deck kind of doesn't really care about what you do until like for the first 4 or 5 turns. It's just functions to put lands on the table. And then
okay, sure.
So we see a Hangerback Walker here.
I was very confused then because he cast Silk Wrap only tapping 1 mana, but I realised he cracked a fetch as well.
Yes, he's taking a shortcut because
the
new format is very slow. Purely because of the number of fetches that are going on. Most decks typically now run 10, some run up to 12, and during a match that amount of shuffling is going to add up, and even like Ataka Red can run to time just because it's fetching like 4 times in a game.
Yeah.
And obviously good practice to also shuffle your opponent's deck, so yeah, the time adds up. But this game is looking a lot better for Alasdair now because Pip is sitting on not a lot. I guess he's hoping that he can get his planar outburst off next turn. But other than that, he's kind of facing quite a quick clock. He's going to take 6 and go to 9 here. Even if he outbursts, he's going to leave his opponent with 2 tokens, and that's not ideal for him because he will be tapped out as well.
Yeah, I think he's probably happy with that because I think he's got the double outburst.
Okay,
so
sure.
I think he can outburst, and then when Alasdair goes, okay, well, actually no, I still had all of this, he can go, wag, I had another outburst still.
Sure.
Because he hasn't played the land off his Nissa either.
Okay.
He elected to play the Flooded Strand instead.
Yep.
So he has the 5th land, so I think he can double outburst, and I think that's probably what he's looking at doing.
Sure. And is that second out? Yeah, that is the second outburst in his hand at the back there. Um, with this many outbursts, it kind of makes it difficult for Alasdair, but the Hangerback Walker is a very good foil to these kind of board wipe type of cards. As you can see now, he's going to get two Thopter tokens if he remembers to trigger, which he does. Clearly a seasoned Hangerback Walker player. And he's going to end the turn, make more tokens, I believe.
Yep. Secure the wastes. Oh, so
he's recovered pretty quickly. Actually. Yep, a Gideon off the top here would be lethal.
Or if he's got one in hand. No Gideons.
But Pip is probably still okay with this because he's going to take the 5, going to 3.
I think if you're Alasdair here, you put him to 5, and then
hope to Rhino.
No, I think he just he's got another Hangerback in hand, so just make that for 2.
Yep, that will.
Because that basically says even if you Wrath, I still have 2 Thopters.
Yep, and then he's got a Shambling Vents for the.
And he's got a Shambling Vent.
Although he looks like he's going to go for the Shambling Vents here, which puts him on to 1, and then he's still got a Shambling Vents for the turn after. So that also works.
I guess that works as well. Yeah.
This is much better from the Abzan deck as it's actually found spells to cast on curve this time.
Yeah.
And Pip draws another outburst.
Don't think it's enough, unfortunately.
Unfortunately not, being on 1 against a Shambling Vent. Does it have any other options? Doesn't look like it. So I think we are going to head to a game 3, I think. As Alasdair looks to close this out with the Shambling Vents. Shambling Vents has been surprisingly good in the new meta game. It's very difficult to deal with.
Yeah, everyone thought that it might be either a bit too slow for the Abzan aggro deck, or the Lumbering Fools would be a bit better because of the Hexproof. But it turns out that a 3 mana 2/3 or effective 4 mana 2/3 is still pretty good.
Yeah, well, the instant speed removal in the format is really poor, which is why some people have started playing Surges.
In the main, yeah.
Because it somehow, despite the restriction of only hitting red and black creatures, is still
enough to kill most of the format.
Yeah, well, it's still probably the second best instant speed removal outside of Crackling Doom.
Murderous Cut.
Oh yeah, sure, and Murderous Cut and Abzan Charm, sure. But like, it for 2 mana, there's not many other ways you can get rid of creatures, and Shambling Vents actually does get hit by Surge, but Shambling Vents definitely benefits from the fact that instant speed removal in the format is quite poor, leading to people playing things like Silk Wrap because it is just the best you can get.
Yep.
Also, with a lot of the threats not being attacking threats, it makes it awkward as well because then you can't play things like Gideon's Reproach.
Correct. Yeah.
So, if Gideon's Reproach can deal with Jace, then it'll be playable, but not being able to kill Jace is kind of awkward when Jace is around.
Yeah. Yeah, Ruinous Path, unfortunately, being sorcery, it makes it not as good as Downfall.
No, certainly not.
The Awaken on it arguably makes it slightly better at sometimes, but if you're getting to that much mana to be able to do that, you're probably winning the game.
The problem I see with the Awaken cards, a lot of them are... So when Awaken first got spoiled, everyone was raving about how good it would be in control shells, because, wow, I can play spells and these will double up as my win conditions. But then as people slowly played with these cards, they realized that what actually happened was, wow, all these Awaken spells get my lands killed, because my opponent has targets for their removal spells now. So they end up with... these cards that are actually backfiring on themselves, because what control deck really wants is to have win conditions that can't get killed, like Ugin. So the pure control lists tend to just sit back and win off Ugins and the odd Shambling Vent poke here and there. So we're shuffling up for game 3 now, and Pip's back on the play, which actually makes Alasdair's Knights better this time round. I think this is the first game he's on the draw, so maybe we can see some of that power coming out of the Knight of the White Orchid?
Yep.
Yeah, Knight of the White Orchid. And certainly it's a winnable matchup for Alasdair as long as he gets the quick aggressive start that he got in that second game there, and Pip stumbles a little bit in terms of finding his big threats, because in that last game Pip drew a lot of his kind of spells and not enough of his threats, so he ended the game with 2 Dig 3 times, Disdainful Stroke, and a couple of other spells, And his opener here looks like it's a one-lander with...
It's a forest hand with nothing else.
Yeah, so we're going to quickly ship that and try and find a better 6. And Alasdair has 2 lands again.
2 lands and some spells.
And some spells. And it's 2 white lands, so if you maybe you will actually see the night start. But if Pip stumbles on mana, then we don't get that again, so you never know. Not completely convinced by how good Night of the White Orchid is, but I'm led to believe that it is quite good. So
yeah, I've heard good things about it.
Sure. I mean, recently Fabrizio and Terry added it to his Esper tokens list.
Yep.
At the beginning, not so long ago, Brad Nelson was also raving about how good this card is in Standard, although he seemed to have moved on to a different kind of a new muse now, which is Bant Megamorph, which is similar-ish to Pip in that it plays green, white, and blue spells, but apart from that, not much to say. And he draws another hand here with just the 1 land.
No, it's 2. He's got a haven and a forest.
Is that a forest in his
yes.
hand? Okay.
Behind the
Ugin.
But no, I don't think that hand is keepable, unfortunately.
Yeah, no white source there with his white spells is a little bit awkward.
Yeah,
and
he would have been able to make turn 2 hang back and hope, but
yeah, but his opponent,
unfortunately.
His opponent is playing a fairly fast deck. He can't afford to sit that far behind. Although there is an argument for keeping that hand because he did have the Surge. If he draws a fetch land for a white source or just a white source straight up, then it could have been fine. But I guess he did considered it too much of a risk, especially on the play, so he doesn't get additional draw step. But he does get a scry, so there's an argument for keeping that hand there.
I think he's hoping that a 5 was better. Fortunately, with Ugin and Planar Outburst in hand, they're kind of dead until you're actually at that amount of mana and your opponent's trying to kill you before you get there. So I think I can see why he didn't like the hand.
Yeah. I can see why he did ship it, but I can also see the counter argument that a hand with Hangerback Walker and Surge of Righteousness with 2 lands is probably as good as the 5 you're going to get, even if you are going to get like a Ugin in it. Or if you ignore the Ugin and you have a Planar Outburst, 2 lands, Hangerback, Surge, you need to draw another land. You probably need to draw 3 other lands, but I can't imagine a better 5 realistically.
That one seems pretty good. 2 land, Hedron Archive and Nissa.
It's okay, but he doesn't have to turn to Hangerback, which I think is what he probably wants in this matchup.
True, but he is on the play, so he does still get to make a Nissa before Alasdair actually makes anything attacking him. So
sure. And he leads off with the battle land tapped, and we're just going to see a couple of turns of tap lands here, I think, or just land go. So, Alasdair gonna... Oh, no, not the Knight. I was getting excited there. Just a Hangerback Walker there for you.
No, the Knight comes next turn.
Oh, yes, sure. So on turn 3, yeah. He draws a Planar Outburst. I think Pip's deck is quite weak to the Hangerback Walkers, actually. Not having access to Silk Wraps because he's playing Ugin means that he can't really exile them, and he has to always give them the value of those top tokens coming into play from when they die.
I don't think Alasdair has a Knight, unfortunately, but he does have a Silk Wrap for the Nissa.
Yeah, I don't think he drew another land either. So he is actually stuck on 2 mana.
Right.
So Pip is okay for now. He's got a lot of land in hand, but on a mulligan to 5, that's not the worst thing, especially considering the power of the cards that he can draw off the top. Exactly.
Yeah, and he's going to make Hedron Archive now, which is going to sort of get him to 7 mana next turn if he needs it.
Yeah, or if potentially unmulligan himself.
Exactly.
And if he should draw an Ugin, he can cast it next turn. No, he can't. 7 mana. Can't count. Don't worry.
No.
But Alasdair being stuck on mana again, very reminiscent of the first game. It's kind of awkward for him. It's kind of unfortunate as well, as Pip did mulligan to 5 in this game, and he probably thought that, oh, there we go, 3rd land. It's okay, crisis over, I think. We hope. But this is not the start he wanted still. He probably would have wanted a bit more pressure on the board by now, potentially an Anafenza or something of that ilk. And he just passes it back.
I quite like the pass back. You're not massively worried of anything right now, and he actually gets to he gets to make the hangerbacks
bigger
this turn. Although Pip is now able to cast Explosive Vegetation and Flip Nissa.
True, but oh no way, you can't Absent Charm that, no. Okay, yeah. I don't think Alasdair anticipated that Pip would have Explosive Vegetation here.
No.
But that is quite a big play, because now Pip is going to be able to kind of draw his way back into the game despite the mulligan. So he's going to get to 7 lands this turn after the vegetation. So vegetation, then play a land, flip Nissa.
He's trying to work out if he wants to keep up double blue or if he wants to keep up colours.
I think
well, blue white or
it's probably quite minor, but like keeping up the blue makes your opponent think a bit more.
Yep, and also something like, I mean, he probably doesn't need it this turn, but something like Surge of Righteousness, he might want to represent at least.
He wants to represent some spells.
Yep.
Like leaving the 2 open means that he's leaving up mana to represent Disdainful Stroke, and if Alasdair draws the 4th, so Alasdair has not played any spells since his 3rd land drop, so you have to kind of think that he probably has 4 drops in his hand.
Yep.
So if he draws the land, he's going to play a 4 drop, and representing Stroke means that he might be put off by that, or he might just kind of not play into the Stroke. But the Flip Nissa here, fairly important here. He's probably going to make the Ashaya so that he can have a blocker. No. It's actually quite tough here, because if he makes the blocker, then it still dies. Nissa still dies to the second walker. If he pluses, then it dies to the walkers as well. So it just depends whether he wants to have the token left over. So he elects to have the token left over, because this way around he kills a hangback walker, Nissa dies, but he still gets to have a 4/4 on the table.
Yeah. So I think Alasdair probably looking at just Abzan Charming away Ashaya and then killing Nissa off. Or he's got Silk Wrap.
Yeah, he's got Silk Wrap, so he can just Silk Wrap the token, gets rid of it permanently, then kill Nissa with one of the hangbacks and get in for 2 damage. This way also allows him to keep himself Ugin safe. So if Pip casts an Ugin next turn, it doesn't actually do very much for him.
Yep. I quite like just killing Nissa and leaving the hangerback to pump up, because your opponent's representing, well, but could potentially be representing the outburst next turn.
Yeah.
So that way you actually leave yourself with a load of 1/1s.
Sure.
5 1/1s is incredibly difficult for Pip to deal with, especially on a multi-5.
I think the difference between 5 1/1s and 4 1/1s is marginal.
1 damage?
It's marginal, because Alasdair has to put on some pressure at some point. He needs to start attacking. He needs to start attacking Pip's life total before he can get to the point where he can draw himself back into the game, because he does have the archive on the table, and he's got to kind of assume that Pip has other ways of drawing cards as well with the blue side of things. So we're going to see an Awakened planar outburst here. Makes a 4/4 forest, and Alasdair's going to get his 4 tokens. So in this situation here, I think Alasdair will just race.
Yeah. Alasdair does have the Abzan Charm as well to just get rid of that forest.
Potentially. I don't think it's that key right now to get rid of the forest.
Not right now, I agree, but as in he does still have the play of just making that.
Yeah,
so
I think I prefer potentially just drawing cards with the Abzan Charm. I think he really needs to find his 4th land. He looks like he's got Gideons and things in his hand, which is it Gideon there?
I think there is a Gideon. Yeah.
So he wants to be able to, he wants to hit a land drop here, but I think he is actually just going to exile to the forest. That's fine too. I think
that's quite a good play. You know, he's not dead to an Ugin.
No.
He's not. He's not really dead to much. He's dead to something like a second planar outburst.
Yeah, he does have a second. He even has a second charm, so if Jamaica comes down, he can get rid of that too.
Exactly. I think his play next turn is to hopefully just get the if his tokens live, then there's a planar outburst. I was going to say if the tokens live, then hopefully 4th land, Gideon, Emblem, and kill, or not kill, but at least drop him down to 5 and.
Yeah. Pip has an interesting choice here whether he wants to hold on to the outburst, because right now the tokens are doing only 4. He's not quite dead, but he doesn't know what the follow-up might be to this. So he can hold it, and then next turn he can awaken it. I think it's for 7.
Yep.
Oh, he's got all the mana he needs, so he can awaken it next turn if he holds it for 1 turn. But I think he's just going to go for it because he doesn't want to take damage. But there is a second line there. He could have just held it to awaken the turn after. But I guess he was worried about the Gideon.
Yep.
And Alasdair here drawing more big stuff and not finding his land drops. I think he has to go for the Absent Charm here to just find his 4th land drop because he plays lots of tapped lands. So yeah, main phasing this Absent Charm seems okay. It is quite a painful Absent Charm there. It's going to cost him.
It is, yeah.
4 life.
Yep.
Play this
down to 10.
Fortunately for him, Pip has only got Surged Righteousness and the fetch land in hand. And there we have it, the 4th land, so we're back in business on Alasdair's side.
He does have Sorin, and I believe he also has a Secure the Wastes.
Okay.
So, he's probably not too bad on life.
Sure. So Pip here really needs to draw more action. So this is where the ramp deck kind of falls apart a little bit, and I think it's why Pip chose to put green, chose to pair his ramp deck with blue. The problem with the ramp deck is that it tends to get to this board state where it's got all the mana it needs, but it doesn't have any of the threats that it was ramping towards. And if your opponent can deal with the threats, or if you just don't draw the threats, you're left with a board full of lands, which doesn't do very much.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that is a big problem with these ramp decks, is they don't really have any pressure if they don't have the threat.
Yeah.
The old builds at least could swarm the board with 1/1s and 2/1s and try and beat down with that if they needed to.
Yeah.
It wasn't the best plan, but it was still a plan that they had.
Sometimes Selfish Mystic got there. So you get Duress, see double Surge, and be like, oh,
choice of Surges.
Probably should have just played that Gideon, but.
Oh, I think he's got another land.
I think he was worried about the Disdainful Stroke.
Yeah, so I think he's got a land anyway.
Yeah.
So
he wanted to make sure the way is clear so that he can cast this safely. It's a good play all around from Alasdair there. Good heads up play just to work out that his opponent's not played anything. So likelihood is he probably has a Disdainful Stroke. But nope, just Surged Righteousness and makes a Gideon with a token. And still though, Pip is not out of this at all. If he just draws an Ugin here, it's still quite big game.
Yeah. And even something like a Dromoka is still pretty big.
Yeah, Dromoka will be okay, but I think Alasdair has another removal spell in hand.
I'm not sure.
He's got
an Ixalis,
so,
yeah.
That will deal with the Dromoka just fine and allow Alasdair to get in for 7, which then quickly translates to lethal the turn after. And then Pip would have to draw another runner. So I think it's Ugin or bust here, but I can't really see Alasdair with so many cards left in hand. It's quite difficult for Pip to deal with, and you see there is a Dromoka, and he is going to cast it because he doesn't really have another choice here. It does mean that Alasdair has full information, knows that he can just cast up next to this, no worries of a negate or a Disdainful Stroke, and he should be fine because then Ugin is the only out. So, up next to this is an interesting card out of the sideboard for Abzan, because it kind of slows the deck down, but I guess in post-board games Abzan does want to slow down sometimes.
Oh, I think he's got a Murderous Cut, so he can actually Murderous Cut,
and
play Sorin, and then attack for a bunch.
Wow.
And gain a bunch of life.
Yes, that seems even better than the line we saw.
Yeah.
And, yep, it's going to uptick Gideon.
Interesting.
But he's not playing the Sorin. Interesting indeed. Wonder why that is. Maybe
I think he might just be going for the end of turn secure.
Yes, I think that. Yeah, I think he's acknowledged that he doesn't want to lose to Ugin, so this line of play protects him from losing to Ugin.
Yep.
And also, secure the waste into Sorin is probably going to be lethal no matter what Pip does.
And he also has Gideon Emblem if he needs to.
Yeah. So again, this is a very well played match from Alasdair. And it's not an Ugin. It's just Nice slow roll there from Pip, winding up the 8 mana with the Ugin.
Yep.
To reveal the hanger back. And then we have it to
There's
secure the waste for the lethal. And that concludes our round 5 match. And interesting deck from Pip. It's unfortunate that he had to mulligan to 5. He struggled a little bit there because of the mulligan, but even so, he looked like at certain points in the game he could still get something out of the match. It was just that Alasdair did eventually find his land drops and then allowed him to play the big spells, and Pip having 2 Surge of Righteousness is kind of awkward because Alasdair wasn't actually playing that many black creatures, it's just Anafenza and Rhinos, and there's a good chance that he actually just boarded out the Anafenzas and Rhinos against the ramp decks.
Yeah, I mean, we saw the Anafenza in game 2.
Yeah.
But I think he probably left them in just because against the ramp deck they do get quite low. They do get to quite a low light total, so getting, just going like Rhino can normally close out a game quite easily. So,
but he didn't see any in those in the last game. So, and with the duress, he had information knowing that he had Surge Strikers, so he just played the non-black
exactly,
threats.
Yeah. So, well played by Alasdair. Unfortunate for Pip.
Yep.
But yeah, so we will be back for round 6, and we will see you then.
Yep. See you soon.